All right, hello and welcome everyone to CareerNub courses. This is the SQL for Data Science course. We're doing a session 2. If you missed out on attending the session 1, we have the recording. It would be on our channel. You can just rewatch that again. So thank you so much for joining in today, and we'll learn tons of SQL today. So let's jump right into it. This the session will be using Mode Analytics at its platform. You know how to access Mode. If you don't, you can again rewatch the session 1. Or if you're already part of our WhatsApp conversations or WhatsApp group, you'll have some indication on how to do this. It should be a very quick installation for everyone, and you can do it in under 2 minutes or so. All right. So in the last session, we learned the basics, the core basics of how to extract the data. So we learned about the select statements, about from mentioning the columns, applying a limit, doing different aggregations, doing filtering, conditional filtering based on where clause, and then finally sorting it by using the order by clause. Today, we are going to learn much more. Today, we are going to focus on string functions, date functions, how to write subqueries, and all of those things. All right. So let's jump right into it. We'll first focus on some of the string functions. Let's first try and look at the data again. Last time we had queried the Crunchbase company's clean data database, or that table. Today we are going to use this one and one other one as well. So let's see what exactly is in this table. For the folks who have attended the session 1 already, this would just be a quick recap of what we had seen in the first session. So we see here that if you write select star from the table name, and just make sure that you're applying a limit so that you're not querying too much data. So you applied a limit of 100, so you get the first 100 rows. You have the permalink, you have the name of the companies, you have the URL, you have the category in which the company is. You have what funding did they raise in that particular round. You have the current status as well, whether it's operating or the operations have been closed. You get the country code, you have the state code, the region, the city. Um, you also have what funding round did it raise at. You also have a date column, which is founded at, and in which year and what date was the company founded. And then lastly, you have the ID as well. Okay, so today let's look at some of the string functions. These are extremely important functions. There are a lot of manipulations that you can do on strings, and most of the data that we get in the industry or where you would be working in companies would not be clean. So one of the things that string functions does is also helps us clean the data. Right. Let's see how we can run some of the string functions. And I'll introduce you some of the most important string functions and also provide you a link with what are the string functions you can actually perform on your data set. Okay. As always, please feel free to post your questions and doubts on the chat here. I'll try and answer any of the questions that we have within the session. If not, definitely be part of our WhatsApp group or just email us with your question, and we'll be happy to revert back with the answers as soon as we can. All right, let's do this. So the first question here is get the length of the company names from the data set and sorted by the highest length, right? Now, what exactly does the length mean here? So let's look at the database here. This says calculate the length of the company name. So that's this column. What exactly? So this is a string column, as you can see. There are text. There's uh, other variables as well, but this is a string column, right? So now, what is the length of a string column? The length is equal to the number of characters in that particular cell, right? So for example, club domains, this would be, so every character is like dot is also a character, space is also character, everything is a character, right? So dot club space domains. So I think this would be dot and 4 5 6, and then add another. 7. So that's 13 characters in this cell, right? So the length of this cell will be 13, right? So the length is equal to the number of characters. Okay. So now let's use a formula to get this length of that particular column. Okay. So let's write a select. We want to get, first let's query the name, just the name, and let's get the length. And the function to do that is just length, right? And let's use this as length of name. You know that we are using this table today. So let's just copy this one. So tutorial.crunchbase companies clean data. As we had seen, you can actually use a alias for this table. So you can mention as t. This is going to be pretty useful when we are doing a lot of subqueries or with clauses and whatnot. And we'll do that in the rest of the sessions. So let's query this one. So once we query, you will see here that you have the name, which is 8868, and then you've calculated the length of this name, which is 4 in this case. As we had seen the .club domains calculated correctly, the length of that is 13, right? So this is how you can get the length of a particular string column. Okay. Now, what's the other thing that is required to solve our problem? Get the length of the company names from the data set and sort it by the highest length. Okay. So now you know that to sort anything, we need to use the order by clause. However, what do we need to order this by? So we need to order this by the length of the name. As we had learned in the last session, you can actually use the alias for this. So name is the first column, and then length of name is the second column, which means that you can do order by 2, and you have to sort it by the highest length, which means that you have to use function named DESC. So you mention to the system that you need to order by the second column, which is length of column, and you need to order it by a descending order, which is DESC. Okay, so let's run this, and you'll see that there is some company which has a length of 58, which is a huge name: Texas Health, Craig Ranch Research, etc. Right? So this is how you can use a combination of length and order by to solve the question that we have. Okay. Now, each of the question, always remember, is about solving a particular problem, right? And to solve any problem in SQL or in any coding language, make sure that you break this down into smaller steps. Okay. So now, as you can see, this was our original question: get the length of the company names from the data set and sort it by the highest length. This means that you can break this down into multiple steps. The first step is, as we did, calculate the length of the company name, right? Using the length function. And then we moved on to the second part, which was sort the data set by this length in a descending manner, right? Or a descending order. So always, whenever you get a SQL problem or any coding problem, make sure that you break this down into smaller steps, right? And only approach solving the problem once you've broken that down into multiple steps. Okay. Each of today's question will be that. And once we give you the homework question, make sure that you're writing those steps, the smaller steps down. Once you get the smaller steps, it becomes very easy to write the code. Okay. Let's move on to our second question of the day. The second question is get the first 5 characters of the company name from the mobile category. Okay. So here again, the first step is we have to filter the data set to only get data from the mobile category, right? Because the question mentions uh, company names from only the mobile category. Hmm? Now you know that any sort of conditional filtering, you have to use the where clause. All right. So let's try and do the first step. So we have done this. So select star, from stable. Let's apply the where condition. And for category, you know that this uses the column category code. And I believe that the is just mobile, right? And then let's try and also put a limit. Let's run this. And you see that the results have all the rows from the category mobile, right? So now you've done the first part, which is filter the data set. So now you have only the data set for the mobile category. So one part of your problem or your question is done. What's the next part? The next part is get the first 5 characters of the company name, right? Now to extract characters from a particular string, you can actually use a function named left. Okay. Now, what exactly does left do? So let's actually query the name, and then let's do left of name, comma 10. And I'll just explain what exactly this does. Okay. So first 10 chars of name. Let's name that. Let's run this query. Perfect. So let's look at this example. So 2020 mobile, right? What did what this function did is from the left or from the starting, you extract 10 characters. So that's what the 10 stands for, right? So you mentioned two things. You mentioned the column name as is defined here. In left, you define the column name, and you mention how many characters do you actually want from that string, right, or that column. So you get the first 10 characters. In the question, it says fetch the first 5 characters. So let's change this to just 5. Let's rerun this query and let's see what the output is. So now you see we have the first 5 characters. So 365 scores becomes just 365 SC because we've extracted the first 5 characters. So left, you can extract it from the starting. Very similar to this is the right function that we'll going to use in probably a couple of questions from now. It extracts everything from the right side or from the end. Yeah, so SQL is pretty relatable in terms of how it's defined in the English language. So everything just makes sense. So when you're grabbing something from the left, the function is called left. If you're grabbing something from the right, the function is called right, right? Let's move to the next question. So this one is a complicated question, but let's try and break this. Always break it down by different multiple steps, right? So the question is standardize the category codes. What exactly does the standardization mean here? The question standardization mean here? It means that there are some underscores in some category codes. We need to replace them by spaces and then change it to uppercase. So let's actually look at that one. So if you go and run this query again, or you can just, yes. So you look at the category code. It's in small case or lowercase. And then there are some category codes such as games video. So those are broken down into games underscore video, right? Let's say you're presenting this to some business leadership or any person outside. They may not, the games underscore video might not be the best way to represent that column, right? So what this question does is ask us to standardize these codes, which means that they want to convert this column into some other column which has standardized codes. Okay. And what exactly does the standardization mean? Replace the underscore by a space and then change it to uppercase. Let's actually read the rest of the question as well. So what this does is it asks us to standardize the code first, and then we have to count the number of companies based on these categories. All right. So the second part, I think if you have done the first session, you would remember. If not, we'll just go through it again. Okay. So let's do the first part. So the step one here is actually replacing the underscore by spaces. So let's see how we can do that. So let's get the category code, and we'll use a function named as replace. So what replace does is exactly as you think it would do. It replaces something by something that you want, right? So what's the input to this? The input to this is the column that you want to work at. So category code. What do you want to replace? You want to replace the underscore. And what do you want to replace it by? You want to replace it by a space. So let's name this as category code, and you have the first set of standardization. Let's just run this. So you run this, and you see that you have now done the first set of standardization. So you've converted the games underscore video to games space video, and you've replaced the underscore with a space. Similarly, you can do any replacement. You can replace characters, you can use words and whatnot. So that's how we did the first standardization. Let's look at the second standardization. So it says you have to first remove the underscore and replace it with space, and then change the entire thing to uppercase. So let's actually do that. Let's copy this entire thing, name this as standardization 2. For uppercase, it's pretty simple. The function is just upper. You wrap this function over the replace function that you wrote, and then you should have the uppercase. So let's see how this looks. So first you converted games underscore video, let's just focus on this cell, to games space video by using the replace function. And then you wrapped an upper function over that to convert everything to an uppercase. Okay, makes sense? Cool. So we have standardized now the category codes. Now, what do we do from here? We have to count the number of companies. So you know that counting is actually an aggregation. Whenever there is an aggregation, you have to make sure that you name a column or have a column, and then you can group it by and then count whatever column that you want, right? So let's do that. Let's use the standardization 2 as our main column. So we can just comment this out. And then when we use this one, we have it as category 2 underscore standard 2. And we can just count name as total underscore companies, right? And we have this. So we need to mention what are we grouping by. And what are we grouping by? The first column, which is the category code standardization. So let's group it by the first column. If we run, hopefully this should run. And we see that now we have the clean category codes, right? So it's all in uppercase. There are no underscores, but there are spaces, so network hosting. And then we have calculated the total companies alongside with that as well. All right. So now you see how we broke down a complicated question, complicated problem into multiple smaller chunks of steps. So always do that. Even the homework questions that we give, we want you to focus more on the steps, on the smaller steps rather than the final code. Because once you get the smaller steps, you'll definitely get the final code. All right. And always make sure that whenever you're solving any problem in especially in coding, you break the bigger problem down into smaller chunks. Okay. All right. So we got the output that we wanted from this. Let's get to the next question, which should be a fun one as well. So extract the company name handle from the permalink or any n characters from the end. Let's see what exactly this question means and how can we solve this. So first of all, let's actually print out what exactly is the permalinks column. Sorry, pasted this function, but we have to use this one, right? And let's apply a limit. Instead of star, let's just look at the permalink. Okay. Cool. So now you see that the permalink is actually slash company slash and then the company name. Okay. So now what this does is the question is extract the company name handle from the permalink. So we actually have to extract 8868 club hyphen domains a hyphen list hyphen games from this one. Okay. So you know that extracting anything, we can use the left or the right functions. We just did that a couple of questions ago. If you want to extract something from the left or from the starting, you can use the left function. However, we want to extract something from the right. So what does this mean that we have to use the right function? Let's actually get 5 characters from the right. And so extract 5 chars permalink, and let's mention from right underscore permalink. Okay, let's run this one. So now you'll see that the query picked out the last 5 characters from the end, right? So this is slash 8868, and then this is works and whatnot, right? But we don't want this. We don't want just the 5 characters. We want the company name, right? So how can we do that? So we can do that by using 2 different things, and let's see how we can use that. So let's first look at the permalink. You'll see that slash company slash, which is 9 characters, is always there, right? So we know that there are 9 characters that we have to delete from a particular string. So how can we delete that from the entire string? We can do that by using a combination of length and right? So let's try and do that. So let's get the length of the permalink as length permalink. And then let's get the length, sorry, the length of the permalink minus 9 as length of permalink minus 9. Okay, let's put the bracket so that the code is readable, and let's run this one. So now you see that you have the permalink, you have the length of the permalink, right? So now you know that the entire permalink is 13 characters. We want to subtract 9 from this. Why 9? Because the slash company slash is equal to 9. And that's why we want to subtract that from the length. And we get 4. So now if you see the length of the company, which is 8868, will be equal to this column, which is equal to 4, right? So once we have this, so for example, club domains is 12. Once we have this, we can actually just input this into the right function. Okay, so let's use this one, the length permalink minus 9, and use that as an input to the right function. So let's write the right function again. we want to perform this on the permalink. And what do we use as the number here? So we want to use the length of the permalink, this one, -9, okay, as company name from permalink. All right, let's actually comment this one out, both of these, and then run. Perfect. So now what we have done is we have used the permalink, and then we used a write function to get characters from the end. How many characters do we want? We want the entire length of permalink -9. We want to subtract 9 from that because we know that slash company slash is equal to 9 characters. All right. So this is how you, again, break it down into simple steps and then approach the problem to make the coding easier, as easy as possible. Okay. So now you know how you can use the right and the length and the left, and you can do a lot of permutation combination with a lot of different things. You can use replace and whatnot. Another way to do this is just you replace slash company slash by nothing or null, and then you can count or have the length of the that, right? So let's let's move on to the next question. Yeah. So there are some questions again. So as I mentioned, you don't need to connect to any database. You just go to mode community and start a new session or a new report. And this is actually a public data set. So if you go here, you'll see that these are all the public data sets that you can actually access. So you don't need to connect to any databases. These are all publicly available, right? If you're on the WhatsApp group, we had pasted how to sign up or sign in and start a new report, and that should be done. So even if you're not able to follow right now or not able to code right now, you can always rewatch this session as we've got like 600 views in the last YouTube video. So make sure that you're watching it again, rewatching it again if you've missed out on any questions or any important concepts, and then you can code along with that, right? And then feel free to post your questions in the WhatsApp group as well. Happy to answer any questions that you folks are facing. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So this looks like a very simple question, but it isn't. It says get all data from the dataset where company name contains mobile. So it's not equal to mobile. What if it was equal to mobile? So let's quickly write that. So from, sorry, let's use this, from this, where category code is equal to mobile, and let's give in a limit as 100. So let's run this. So you've done this before, you know that if you filter it by mobile, you'll get all the data set with the category code equal to mobile, right? What this question does is it says that we have to filter data set where company name contains mobile. So not the category, but the company name should contain mobile. So let's see how we can do that. So instead of category code, first you need to write name, because that's the column that we are going to use, right? And then to match a string within the where clause, you can use something called as like, Like. So when you do this, you tell the system that you are looking for you want to query, you want to look in the column name, this one, and then you want to query this string which is like this string. Okay, so name is like mobile. However, you have to make sure that you mention percentile before and after, and I'll just explain what exactly this does. Let's run this and see what happens. So now you have 12 rows. If you look at the name of the companies, all of these would contain the word mobile or the string mobile. right? So you have booklet mobile, you have brick and mobile, fast mobile, and all of these things, but you have the word mobile in them. Okay. Now, what does the percent mean here? The percent at the starting means that there could be any characters at the starting, and then there would be the string mobile. And then at the end, it means that there could be any percentile at the end after mobile, right? So let's see what happens if we remove one of the percentiles. So let's remove the percentile from the start, okay? And let's compare result. Remember that we got 12 rows and we got all the company names which had mobile in their string. So let's run this. So now we just get 3 rows. Why do we get 3 rows? We get 3 rows because we tell the system that we want to column we want company names which start with mobile and it can have anything at the end, right? So this means mobile percent means that you need to start with mobile. The string has to start with mobile, and then there could be any other characters. Percent just means any other character after that. Let's place the percent first and remove it from the last, and let's see what happens. So now you have 8 companies which end with mobile. So this says that it could be any characters, it could be anything in the starting, but it has to end with mobile, right? So then you have booklet mobile and neo mobile and park mobile and all of these which end with mobile, right? So this is how you can write like functions, and you can use a lot of different variations based on the question that was asked or the problem that you're solving, right? So let's go back to the original and see what happens. We will get again the 12 rows and get all the companies which actually have the word or the string mobile in them. Okay, so now the does this question end here? It doesn't. This says get all data from dataset where company name contains mobile. Now, what is a good practice is not just to check the string itself. However, what we want to do is also check if the same string is present in upper as well. So let's do one thing. Let's actually replace this to an uppercase and see what happens. Do we get any company name which has an upper mobile in them? It doesn't. Let's see if it has this string in them. Oh, there are a lot of companies which have a capital M followed by mobile, right? So mobile, so same string, but it has the first capital letter, and then there are tons and tons of companies which have mobile in them. So what do we do here? We use the function named as lower. So just as upper, there is a lower function which converts the entire string to lower. So what we want to compare is first convert this string or the company name into lower, and then check for a lower string named mobile, right? So let's run this. And you'll see that now you have a lot of different rows which has mobile, and it will have smaller mobile as well, and anything, any form of mobile, it will capture, right? Because you now have mentioned that you first need to convert this to a lower string or a lower case, the entire company name, check for that particular string. The same way, what you can do is just convert this to upper and make sure that you're checking with an uppercase, and you can run the same query and get the same result. So it's the same result, right? So this is how you can use a combination of like and upper and all of these things to get the filtration part or whatever that you're solving, right? So let's look at, I think, one last string function, which is again a very important function. So the question is pretty simple. It says get the country, region, and city in a single column for valid countries. So let's actually refer back to what we had in the original database. Let's quickly run this. And you'll see, if you scroll, you'll see that there's country code, there's state code, there's region and city. This wants us to focus on country, region, and city. And what this does is ask us to get this into a single column, right? For only valid countries. Now, for only valid countries, let's actually put a condition where country code is not equal to blank. So you see there are a lot of blanks in this. So we can just remove. So not equal to, if you remember from the conditional filtering in session one, this is basically just not equal to a null string. Let's run this again and see if that's that's what we want. So that is what we want. Now you have filtered all the country names which have a null or no strings, and that's what you filtered. Now, what's the first part of the question? It says get all of these three strings into a single column, which means that we have to concatenate. So let's get the country. So country code, the region, and the city. And now we'll create another column, which is a concatenation of all of this. So for concat, just use the function concat, mention as many columns as you want. So in here, we want these three columns, region and city. And let's name this as country, region, city. Okay, let's run this and see what output do we get. So now we get the country code, the region and city in different columns. That's what we selected. And then we also get the concatenation of all of this, which is USA, SF, Bay, San Francisco, right? So you've concatenated all of these three strings together. Now, this is a bit unreadable. So what you can actually do is have your own strings concatenated to this. So let's actually introduce a pipe between these. So let's do space, pipe, space, comma, space, pipe, space, comma. So now you're concatenating five different things: the country, the first pipe, region, the second pipe, and city. Let's see how this would work. Perfect. So now you have concatenated all five strings. So you have USA space pipe space SFB, which is much more readable for anyone who's working. Yes, that is the database. Cool. So now we have done most of the important string functions. We'll share this with you. If you want to learn more about string functions, you can just go here. And these are all the different string functions that you can actually perform on any Postgres SQL. Okay, cool. Let's move ahead and do some of the date functions. This is again very, very important. Let's go ahead and do the date functions. This is again a very, very important topic. So let's just date. What exactly are date functions? It manipulates any date function, any date columns that you have, and you can do a lot of different things from a particular date column, right? So the first question of this is get the date, month, and year of the funding date, right? I think this would be the founding date, I think. Let me check. Yes. So let's reprint our first 100 rows. Oops, just this. And limit it to 100. just to check which date column do we have, right? So if you scroll, you'll see that there is a column named founded at, right? So this is not the funding date, but the founding date, right? So founded at, and there's a founded at clean as well. So let's use the clean date for now, and then we can see how we can convert. So this, what does this do? It says get the day, month, and year of the founding date. Okay. So whenever you want to get something from a date, you can use a function named extract. So let's actually founded at clean. Let's use the extract function. So extract, you need to mention what you need to extract. So first you need to extract the day, which is, you can mention day. From which column do you need to extract this? So from, you need to extract it from the founded at clean, right? And let's name this as day, founded at, okay. Let's run this, but we'll definitely get an error, and I'll explain why we'll get an error. We'll get an error because the founded at clean is actually a string variable or a string column. We need to first convert this into a date function. The way that you can do conversions is by using something called as cast. So let's actually comment this out, and cast founded at clean. You're gonna cast this as date. So let's use this and underscore date. Let's run this. So now you see that the founded at clean, which was a string character string column, has been converted into a date column, right? So now you can use this and pass it in the extract function to get the final result of the day. So let's do that. Let's uncomment this, comment this out, and see what happens. So now you have the founded at clean. So this says 2013, 1st of Jan. So the day would be 01. Further, similarly, the day will be 10 and so on and so forth, right? Make sure that you have a founded at clean date. So let's actually just filter out the ones which are empty. Okay. Clean is again not equal to just a null. Okay. And there are two other things. So we have to extract the month and the year. Pretty simple. You just copy this 2 times, and let's replace the day by month and this by year. And let's change the name of the columns. So this is year and this is month. Let's run this. Perfect. So now 2013 0101 is day founded at 1, month founded at 1, and the year founded at is 13. Okay. So now again, make sure that you are writing these steps, the smaller steps, and see how you can actually answer a complicated questions and break it down into simple steps. So here is the link of more datetime functions. So instead of just month, year, and whatnot, there are tons and tons of different functions, and you can actually mention a lot of different things as well. So you can mention the microsecond, minute, the month, quarter, the decade, the century, and whatnot. So they're ready-made functions that extract from. So you can just write extract century from or decade from this date, and it will give you the decade or the quarter or whatever that you want to mention. All right. So there are different extract functions. Now, you see how the extract function just extracts the number and not the date of that particular thing. So let's say if we want to do the same thing but in the date format. So let's get the day, the month, and the year of the funding date in date format. So let's actually copy this because the where conditions and everything remain the same. and select the founded at clean date. Let's run just this. And there is something called a function called as date trunk. So what exactly does date trunk do, and how is it different from extract? So date trunk, as trunk is pretty usually used, is truncates the date to what you want particularly. Okay, so now what does this mean? You can truncate to date, and what column do you want to use? You actually want to use the cast founded at clean as date column as day date, and let's see how this would actually run, right? And once you run the code, you'll see what exactly is the difference between extract and date trunk. So what you have here is that you have converted this into the day. So if you look at this, the 2011-05-01, or um, all of these as just that particular day, right? So you won't see a lot of difference. Let's look at the month and see what stuff. So let's do month. Let's see the output. So now, if you look at the second row, you see that 2011 10th of 10th is 2011 10 in day, and then in month it's 10/01. So you have the first date in that month. So this is different from extract because it gives out the date that you want, and this is pretty useful if you're running any multiple queries or analysis based on how you want to represent the data and not just extract the number of the month or the year. So let's actually do the year as well, and you will see that it will just pick um, the first date of the year, which is 01/01. Let's run this. And you see that you have 05/01, and then the year is actually 2011/01/01, right? So this is how you can actually extract and then date trunk, and use both of them. Okay. Now, for the following question, let's use the Crunchbase companies. It's a very similar database. It just has a couple of additional columns. What we want to do is have a pretty complicated question, which is what's the average number of years at which companies receive their first funding? Okay. So let's actually do this. So what we want to do is first let's filter out all companies which don't have a founded date add is not null. Let's, oh, we have to use the company's data. So that's the first step. We have removed all of that. Now, what we need to do is there is something called as the first funding date, which is here. So there's a founded at date, and then there is a first funding at date as well. So we want to find the difference between these two. So first we need to, that we need to cast this as date. Another way to cast anything as date is just a pretty handy date function. So you can actually write just the date founded at, and that would be just founded at. You can do a similar thing in the first funding at, and that would be first funding at. And then what you want to do is basically find the difference between these two. You can actually, in this Postgres, you can actually just use the minus or the subtraction sign. So you can use the first funding date minus the date when it was founded, and this would give you the difference in dates. And let's run all of these three columns. So now what you have is just the difference between the first funding date and then the found date, which is in days. So in actually, let's make sure that this is days. So this is 320 days if you count, this is 599 days, 427, etc., etc. So you have calculated the difference between these two. What's the final question? The final question is actually what's the average number of years at which companies receive their first funding? Okay, so now what we want to do is just comment these out. We want to use the average function as you know, and let's actually run this, just this. And you see that the average difference in days is so let's do average difference in days is 1185. So at an average, companies take about I know what is this, about 3.5 years to basically get their first funding. You know from previous classes that you can actually just use a mathematical operator and then divide it by 365 for easy reasons, and then you'll get the average difference in years. So the average difference in years from where a company starts and where it gets the first funding is actually 3.25, right? So this is how you can, again, complete question but broken down into simple steps. We'll share this raw file with you. Make sure that you're not, we'll share a file without the code as well. So make sure that you're referring to only that. And then practicing the coding questions so that you pick up the habit of writing these smaller steps and then coding after writing those mini steps as well, right? Okay, so let's look at an extremely important topic, which is subquery. So what exactly is a subquery? As the name suggests, a subquery is a SQL query as you have been writing, but it's nested inside a larger query. Okay, and this is extremely useful in many situations. And let's just see how we can use that in a couple of examples. So what's the average number of years at which companies receive their first funding? This is the same question that we did above, right? But instead of commenting and doing all of these things, we can actually have a much simpler UI or much simpler code. Let's use that. So the let's write the inner query first. So select, you can just actually copy the first two functions that we already wrote. So these are the two dates, and then this is the difference that we wanted. So let's uncomment these, and you have all of this as difference in days. Okay, and let's just run this query once. You already know the output of this. We had run this before, so you know that if you run both of the dates, and you'll get, if you subtract it, you'll get the difference in the number of days. Now, what we need to do is find the average of this difference in days. So what we can do is we can wrap this inside a larger query. So let's select. So how would this look? This would look as average of difference in days as just average difference in days. From, now from, you need to mention that we want to use this entire thing. So let's just create a tab and just copy this as the inner query, right? Whenever you're using an inner query or a subquery, make sure that it's as a table, make sure that it has a name. So let's mention this as inner query. Okay, so now this inner query will behave that it's a table in itself. And what's the table? The table is founded at, first funding at, and the difference in days, right? So you can use this inner query as forming a table, and then write an outer query which says average of difference in days. This is what you actually wanted from this table, right? And then the limit 100 days. So let's run this, and you'll see that the difference in days is actually 1185. That was what our original answer was. You can actually just divide this by 365, and then you'll get the average difference in years. So let's run that quickly. And you'll see that the average difference is 3.25 in years. So inner query, it outputs um, it executes the inner query first. So I'll just mention this here. Inner query executes first, passes the output to the outer query, right? And then you can use that particular output to run the averages or whatever you want to run. It will just be treated as the output database, right? So this is how you can use subqueries. Let's actually do one or two other quick questions, and stop there. So again, let's use the tutorial Crunchbase companies clean data again. Find all companies who have raised more than the average of funding. Okay, so what this does, let's copy this. So select, let's actually just repurpose what we have, clean data, founded at clean, and then limit 100. Let's run this again. And you'll see that we have the first 100 rows. We want to calculate the average funding from this data set. So you know how to do that. So average funding total USD as average of funding. Let's see what the average funding is in from this database. So the average funding is close to, I think this is 15 million-ish, right? So that's the average funding. We want to find all the companies who have raised more than the average of funding, right? So we want to compare this particular output to our input, to our actual larger query. So let's wrap this into a larger query. So let's select, I just write select star from this table itself, and let's use the where clause as well, where founded at clean is not equal to null, and the funding total USD is greater than or equal to the output of this, right? And how do we mention that we want to use the output? We just mentioned that we want to use this subquery. Let's indent this better. Perfect. So what we have done is in the where clause, we now will compare the funding total USD with the output of this inner query. What was the output of this inner query? It was around 15 million, whatever this number is, right? So let's run this. And obviously we just want to use the limit as 100. If we run this, we'll see that we get a lot of data. However, if you look at the funding total USD, it will always be greater than the average value, which we had calculated, which is, I think, I don't know, 1.5 billion or something, that number. Okay. So this is how you can use the inner query in a where clause as well. All right. So this is all about using the inner queries and how you can nest different queries, get the output to the outer query, and then use that as to query whatever problem that you're trying to solve. All right. These were all the questions that we had today. Today we learned about a lot of different string functions. We learned about length, left, right, replace, and a ton of other string functions. We learned how to change the string function to a date function, how to extract the years and months from that, and then we also looked at how we can do difference of dates. Right. Finally, we learned about how do you nest different queries and how do you use subquery as an inner query, pass it on to the outer query, and query and write a nested query to solve the final problem, right? So thank you so much again for attending today's session. You can rewatch this session. We'll just post the link to this YouTube video in our WhatsApp group, and also share a mail with the detailed learnings that we had today, so that you can practice. We'll share these raw files with you so that you can have a look at the questions. First, have a look at the questions, solve the entire question by coding, and only then, if you don't get it, look at the code file and copy the code as well. Right. So thank you so much again for attending today's session. We'll see you in the next session, in session 3, which is same time next Thursday. Thank you so much.